Aaliyah Porter almost deleted the Ravelin Crest message because it looked like the kind of quarterly notice she had read 100 times before. She was standing at the kitchen counter in a deep ruby blouse, trying to answer 2 messages before the heating contractor arrived, when a subject line caught her eye: permanent capital authorization required. Beside her laptop was a new charging cable. The old one had been splitting near the plug for weeks. Evan must have replaced it before leaving that morning. He had not mentioned it. That was still how some things happened after nearly 16 years of marriage. Small acts of attention surviving inside larger stretches of distance. Aaliyah opened the notice. Ravelin Crest Holdings LLC was not Evan's company, and it was not hers. It was the jointly governed structure they had created after the worst business year of their marriage, when overextended investments had frightened both of them enough to change how they handled liquidity. They each had separate money. Ravelin Crest was different. It held a protected reserve. They had agreed neither would permanently draw down above a set threshold without the other's written approval. The amount on the notice was far above that threshold. Transaction classification: residential acquisition. Destination: Leora Ridge Acquisition LLC. Evan Manning, approved. Aaliyah Porter, bonding. She called Gina Keating, who had administered Ravelin Crest for 7 years and had mastered the art of being helpful without becoming part of their marriage. "Tell me only what I'm entitled to know. That makes my life easier," Gina said. She confirmed that Evan had initiated a permanent capital request connected to a residential purchase. A limited earnest amount had already moved within Evan's ordinary authority. The larger closing draw could not move without Aaliyah's approval. What property? Villa Leora. The buyer entity is Leora Ridge Acquisition LLC. Who owns that entity? Not information I administer through Ravelin Crest. And you don't know why he's buying it. I know what the payment request says. I don't know what your husband intends emotionally, and an account code won't tell me. Aaliyah thanked her. 40 miles away, Greta Bishop stood in the spare room of her leased apartment, reviewing measurements for a property she had been told would soon be available. Greta had built a respectable design practice one client at a time and wanted to create small 2-day retreats for independent designers. Villa Leora, a vineyard country property with a detached stone studio, had made that plan feel possible. Evan had shown her photographs, arranged a viewing, and told her the purchase was handled. She had paid a photographer a modest, non-refundable planning fee, given a carpenter a deposit to sketch a movable work table, and let 2 clients tentatively hold autumn weekends. In the assignment packet, she had noticed language about additional authorization. She had considered asking Evan what it meant, then decided that men with his money had approval layers attached to everything. The answer was convenient enough to leave alone. Back home, the heating contractor rang the bell. Aaliyah walked him to the utility room, approved an ordinary service estimate, and felt the strangeness of a morning in which the house still needed heat, while her husband might be trying to commit millions from a reserve they had built together. After the contractor left, she called Evan. "What is Villa Leora?" Silence came first. Not surprise. A property outside Bellwether Valley. For whom? Another pause. Greta. Aaliyah looked at the new charging cable. "You're trying to buy your mistress a villa with money from Ravelin Crest. I'm trying to complete a transaction. The funding question is manageable. Did you know the permanent draw require my authorization?" "Yes." "Did you have it?" "No." "Then it wasn't managed." Evan said there was still time to handle the remaining pieces. Aaliyah opened the authorization page. She did not know what Greta had been told or whether Evan had another plan. She knew only that a reserve could not mean mutual protection if one spouse treated the other's signature as a detail to obtain after commitment. She selected Decline Authorization and submitted it. "I just refused to draw." Evan went quiet. "You don't understand the timing." "No," Aaliyah said. "You don't understand the word no." By noon, Aaliyah knew Villa Leora was not casual browsing. The property was under contract to Leora Ridge Acquisition LLC. The seller had accepted Evan's offer. A limited earnest deposit had been paid for money he could move within his unilateral authority, and a large permanent Ravelin Crest draw was supposed to provide most of the cash portion of closing. A buyer assignment meeting at Juniper Vale Residential Partners was already scheduled because Greta was expected to become the incoming buyer assignee before closing. None of that came from a secret investigator. Gina sent Aaliyah only transaction information attached to the funding request Aaliyah was entitled to approve or refuse. The rest Evan admitted because Aaliyah kept asking narrow questions. Did Greta ask you for the villa? She wanted a permanent place. Did you tell her the reserve belonged to both of us? It isn't a checking account with both our names printed on it. Did you tell her I had to approve the draw? He paused. I told her the funds were available. They weren't. They could have been. Aaliyah looked at the clock. I'm going to the assignment meeting. You've already declined. Then they should hear that from the person whose signature is missing. You want to embarrass me. If I wanted to embarrass you, we would be having a very different day. On the drive to Juniper Vale, Aaliyah passed the grocery store where, during the old business crisis, she and Evan had once stood in an aisle laughing over whether they really needed the expensive coffee they both liked. They had bought the cheaper bag and gone home feeling oddly proud, not because the savings mattered to their wealth, but because they had made the decision together. That memory was why Ravelin Crest mattered now. The reserve had never been about whether they could survive a bad month. It had been a promise that neither of them would decide alone what the other should be willing to risk. Aaliyah parked and sat with both hands on the steering wheel for a full minute. She was not going inside to prove that Evan was bad or Greta was foolish. She was going because a transaction was waiting on a consent nobody had obtained. Inside the building, Greta was reading a message from the carpenter saying he had already ordered one custom sample based on the timeline she had given him. She started to type that the project might be delayed, deleted the sentence, and put the phone away. She still wanted to believe the meeting would be administrative. Wanting that did not make it true. Greta arrived at Juniper Vale 10 minutes early in an ivory blouse and stone-colored jacket, carrying her room plan and assignment packet. Gordon Pruitt, the neutral closing professional, met her in reception. There's one authorization issue we need to clarify before anyone signs, he said. From the lender? This is not lender financing. We'll cover it when everyone required is present. Greta felt the first cold movement in her stomach. When Evan arrived, she stood. Whose authorization? We're going to handle it. Whose? Aaliyah entered behind him. Greta had seen photographs of her. In person, she noticed not rage, but composure that did not need to perform surprise. Deep brown skin, dark eyes, polished black hair to her shoulders, ruby silk under a dark coat. Gordon closed the door and kept the meeting narrow. Leora Ridge Acquisition is the current buyer entity. The proposed assignment names Ms. Bishop. The represented closing funds plan includes a permanent draw from Ravelin Crest. That draw requires 2 approvals under the instructions provided to us. We have Mr. Manning's. We do not have Ms. Porter's. Greta turned to Evan. You said the funds were available. I expected to resolve the authorization before closing. Did you know she had to approve it? Yes. Did she agree? No, Aaliyah spoke. Ravelin Crest is jointly governed. The permanent draw proposed for Villa Leora requires my approval. I have declined it. I did not authorize my husband to use those funds to acquire this property for Ms. Bishop. Gordon nodded. Then I cannot treat the Ravelin Crest funds as currently authorized. He did not say the deal was dead. Tell Evan what to do or praise Aaliyah. He simply moved that funding page out of the active stack. Greta looked at the assignment. I'm not signing this today. Evan's jaw tightened. That doesn't help anyone. It helps me not sign something I don't understand. Aaliyah had imagined, without admitting it, that once the facts were spoken clearly the room would align around them. Instead, Greta opened her folder and pulled out 2 emails and an invoice. I need to know something practical. I paid a planning deposit for a photographer and a carpenter because I was told this property was going to be available. I have 2 clients holding dates. If I don't take the assignment, what happens to those commitments? Gordon said her private arrangements were outside the closing file. Evan immediately said, I'll reimburse you. Greta looked at him. I didn't ask you yet. Aaliyah felt something shift. Until then, she had organized consequences into clean categories. Evan created them. Greta benefited. Aaliyah stopped them. If costs followed, They belonged on the other side of the line. But the photographer did not know Evan was married. The carpenter had not agreed to become evidence in an affair. The clients had blocked dates because Greta had promised a place she believed would exist. None of that made Aaliyah responsible for solving it. It did make the consequences less neat. Greta closed her folder. "You had every right to say what you said," she told Aaliyah. "But I need a day before anyone decides what I'm supposed to do with the rest of my life because you said it." Evan started to answer. Greta cut him off. "You've been deciding for everyone all week." As the meeting ended, a loose page slipped from Greta's folder. Aaliyah picked it up. A simple sketch of the villa studio, 6 chairs around a long table, notes about light and storage. She handed it back. Greta took it without thanks. Aaliyah had exposed the deal and protected the money she had never authorized. She had not restored order. The next morning, Gina emailed Aaliyah that Evan had used unquestionably separate cash to restore every temporary Ravelin crest effect connected to the earnest stage movement and administrative costs. No permanent closing funds had been released. Aaliyah read the message while the heating contractor explained why one upstairs thermostat kept losing connection. "So you can fix it?" she asked. "Yes. I'd replace the control unit instead of patching it." She approved the ordinary repair. When he asked whether her husband should be copied, she almost said yes automatically, then said, "Send it to me." That evening, Evan came home after spending the night at a hotel. Aaliyah had told him she did not want to share a bedroom, but she had also decided the constant hotel departures made the house feel staged, so he moved into the guest room. He set his overnight bag in the foyer. "I restored Ravelin crest," Gina told me. I also spoke to Greta about the planning costs. I offered to reimburse what she incurred because I told her the property would be available. Did she accept? Not yet. And the photographer? Carpenter, I can cover legitimate cancellation costs. Aaliyah set down a grocery bag. "You think this is going well? I think I'm taking responsibility. For money. Money is part of the responsibility." "Yes, but you sound like you found the list." "What list?" "Everything measurable. Put the reserve back. Pay Greta. Pay the photographer. Pay the carpenter. Make the numbers 0 again." Evan's face hardened. "Would you prefer I leave people with costs I caused?" "No." "Then I don't understand your objection." "That's what scares me." They unpacked groceries together with the old efficiency of married people who knew where everything belonged. "You keep hearing me say the payments are wrong," Aaliyah said. "I'm saying they're not the whole thing. I know that. Then tell me why you built a transaction around my signature before you had it." "Because there was a distribution due next month from one of my separate investment vehicles. Enough to replenish the reserve comfortably." Aaliyah stopped. "So you were going to take the money, replace it, and tell me after?" "I expected to speak to you before closing. After the seller was under contract. After Greta planned work around it. After the assignment meeting was scheduled. After you created enough inconvenience that my no would hurt people." Evan said nothing. "You didn't think I would say yes," Aaliyah said. "I thought once the replacement money was in sight, you would understand there was no real exposure. You knew my consent was missing. You thought you could make the reason for my consent disappear." Evan sat at the breakfast table, suddenly looking less like a billionaire caught in a transaction and more like the man who had once admitted at 2 in the morning that he was afraid to tell his wife how bad a quarter really was. "I hated that year," he said. "So did I. I hated watching you calculate groceries when we were still objectively wealthy. I hated needing you to be calm because I wasn't. When the business recovered, I promised I would never put you in that position again. And somewhere along the way that became. If I can replace it before she feels it, I don't have to ask." He looked up. "I didn't think of it that way." "I know." Later, Greta canceled the photographer dates. One fee was non-refundable, though part could be applied to future work. The carpenter could return most of her deposit because fabrication had not begun. Her tentative clients were disappointed, not furious. Evan texted asking for a total. Greta finally called him. "I'll cover your losses," he said. "Some of them." "Why not all?" "Because I knew you were married. I saw the authorization language. I didn't ask because I liked the answer I already had. If you pay for every mistake I make near you, eventually I can't tell which mistakes are mine." Greta ended the call, and looked at her Villa Leora room sketch. The 6 chairs no longer looked like a future. They looked like evidence of how quickly dependence could become a plan and call itself independence. Aaliyah did not become kinder to Greta because Greta admitted avoiding the authorization question. Innocence would have been easier to categorize. Deliberate ignorance was more familiar. The thing adults did when truth stood too close to something they wanted. 2 days after the exposure, Greta emailed Aaliyah directly. Subject: vendor contact. Evan offered to pay both. The photographer's cancellation cost came from my booking, not yours. I'm handling it. The carpenter had already ordered a custom sample because Evan told him the timeline was certain. That one is on Evan. I'm sending this because I don't want him telling you later that I asked him to rescue me. Aaliyah waited before replying. Understood. She did not add thank you. Gratitude would suggest intimacy neither woman had earned or wanted. That afternoon, Gina called about an unrelated quarterly matter. After they finished, Aaliyah surprised herself. Can I ask something that isn't really a Ravelin question? You can ask. I may decline. What does it look like when governance is restored but trust isn't? Gina paused. Operationally? No. Then I'm probably the wrong person. I know. But you knew us when we built this. Gina softened without becoming sentimental. Maybe a system working proves the system can stop a decision. It doesn't prove the person wanted to respect the reason the system existed. Aaliyah closed her eyes. That's what I needed. Then don't ask me to monitor him. I wasn't going to. Good. I won't. That evening, Evan came home with no flowers, jewelry, folder, or plan. He asked before entering the kitchen while Aaliyah cooked. You live here, she said. I'm trying not to assume. Don't turn basic movement into a referendum. He nodded, opened a refrigerator, and asked, Do we need anything? You can look. That sounded like a trap. It wasn't. He checked the shelves. We're low on coffee. Then by coffee. He gave her a tired look. I'm apparently relearning civilization one bag at a time. Don't make jokes, so I have to decide whether laughing means forgiveness. Fair. When he returned, he brought the coffee brand Aaliyah preferred and put it in the pantry without comment. She noticed and hated that she noticed. Greta sent me a cost list, he said. Only 2 items. I know. She contacted you? About a vendor. Nothing else. She's refusing the photographer loss. Maybe she thinks it's hers. I offered. I'm sure you did. You say generosity like it's evidence. Aaliyah leaned back. Sometimes it is. Of what? Whether you can tolerate someone refusing it. Evan looked away. She also said she doesn't want the villa assignment moving forward. Because of the money? She said she can't tell whether anything about it belongs to her if I'm arranging every condition around her. That sounds like something you should discuss with her. Evan stared at the table. She ended the affair. Aaliyah did not feel relief. The absence startled her. When? This afternoon. And you're telling me because? Because hiding things is how we got here. No, deciding for people is how we got here. Hiding helped. Evan flinched. Aaliyah felt a flash of satisfaction at hurting him and dislike herself for enjoying it. I'm sorry, she said. For what? For wanting that to hurt. You're allowed. I'm allowed to be hurt. That's not the same thing. Aaliyah sat across from him. I was treating every consequence on Greta's side like it automatically belonged there because she was sleeping with you. Some of it does. Some doesn't. I need to tell the difference. What do you want me to do? Evan asked. Aaliyah heard the trap inside the innocent question. I don't want you asking me what to do with Greta's life. Handle the costs you caused. Accept the costs she chooses to own. Don't turn reimbursement into access. And with you, I don't know yet. For the first time, he did not ask how long she needed. Villa Leora disappeared from their daily conversation for almost a week. Evan restored Ravelin Crest completely. The carpenter received payment for the custom sample he had produced only because Evan represented the project timeline as certain. Greta accepted reimbursement for that cost and nothing else. The photographer applied part of her deposit to a future shoot. The tentative clients released their dates. No one went bankrupt. No empire trembled. Villa Leora still existed beyond the city, indifferent to the adults who had reorganized around it. On Friday morning, Aaliyah supervised the thermostat replacement while Evan took a conference call upstairs. The technician held up 2 control units. This one costs more, but you probably won't notice the difference. Aaliyah chose the cheaper, reliable one. After he left, Evan came downstairs. All fixed. Yes. Which unit? She told him. Good choice. You don't have to approve my thermostat decisions. I was making conversation. I know. I keep hearing power in normal sentences. Probably because I put it there often enough. That stopped her. Evan leaned against the counter. There's something I need to tell you before you hear it somewhere else. The seller gave Leora Ridge a short extension. The purchase can still close if the buyer entity produces an acceptable alternate funding source. Aaliyah felt a small, cold clarity. And can you? Yes. With your separate money. Yes. Then this isn't my decision. No. Are you asking what I want you to do? Evan hesitated. I want to know what it would mean to you. If I tell you abandoning it is the price of staying married, you can abandon it and still learn nothing. If I buy it, you'll know something. Yes. That seems unequal. Betrayal creates unequal tests. He absorbed that. Greta has said she won't take the assignment. The entity could still acquire the property as an investment, sell later, or walk away and lose the deposit. Aaliyah's expression hardened. Don't turn this into a portfolio meeting. I'm telling you the actual choices. You're showing me how quickly you convert meaning back into assets. Evan went still. I'm trying to be precise. Precision protects you. And what do? The question came sharper than most things he had said. What is that supposed to mean? You turn moral clarity into distance. You decide the correct principle, then stand inside it where nobody can touch you. Aaliyah stared at him. Be careful. I am. You were right about the authorization. Completely right. But after that meeting, you treated every consequence to Greta like proof the system was working. You didn't care who had agreed to what. You don't get to use my blind spot to balance your betrayal. I'm not balancing anything. I hurt you by deciding what counted as harm for you. You almost responded by deciding what counted as acceptable harm for everyone else. The sentence enraged her because part of it was true. Get out of the kitchen. Evan nodded and left. That afternoon, Aaliyah sat alone in a cafe with a notebook. She wrote 3 headings. What is mine? What is his? What is not mine to decide? Under the first, Ravelin consent. Marriage, where I live. Under his, villa, his money, whether he understands. Under the third, Greta's forgiveness. Greta's work, what his change should earn. She stared at the last line. If Evan abandoned Villa Leora because he believed doing so purchased another chance, the gesture would reproduce the same pattern in a respectable form. If he bought it because he was legally free to, that would reveal something else. Either way, Aaliyah could not become the price list. Greta, meanwhile, rebuilt her autumn schedule. She used the photographer credit on a restaurant client and thanked the carpenter for returning the unused deposit. Evan sent, I'm sorry I made promises with conditions you couldn't see, Greta replied. I'm sorry I chose not to look harder. She did not ask what he would do with Villa Leora. She no longer wanted her decision to depend on what he did with an expensive property after losing her. By Monday, Gordon's revised funding deadline was Friday at noon. Evan could complete the purchase without Ravelin Crest. Aaliyah knew the option existed. She had no lever left. The week of the Villa Leora deadline was the quietest week of Aaliyah and Evan's marriage. They were not reconciled and not openly separated. Evan slept in the guest room. Aaliyah stopped updating his calendar unless something directly affected him. He stopped replacing things before asking whether she wanted them replaced, except when the thing was clearly his responsibility. That distinction created absurd moments. One evening, he stood beside a burned-out pantry bulb, holding a new one. May I? It's a light bulb. I know. Change the light bulb. I'm trying to learn. Learn judgment, too. He laughed once. Aaliyah laughed despite herself, and for a second, both heard the old marriage inside the sound. The moment hurt enough that she went upstairs. On Wednesday, Evan asked if she would eat dinner at the table instead of taking her plate to the study. Why? Because I miss you. It was the first uncomplicated answer he had given her in weeks. She sat down. Halfway through dinner, he said, the Villa Leora deadline is Friday. I know it's this week. I haven't funded it. Aaliyah put down her fork. Are you waiting for me to react? No, then why tell me? Because not telling you would be another decision about what you should know. She considered that. Okay, I don't want you hearing Friday that I walked away and thinking I did it only because Greta ended things. Maybe that is partly why. Maybe. Then don't build a heroic story around it. I'm trying not to. I don't know how to separate motives as cleanly as you want me to. I don't want clean motives. I want you to stop using mixed motives as an excuse not to choose. He nodded. Thursday morning, Greta messaged Aaliyah. I'm closing the retreat idea for now. The photographer credit is being used on another client project. Carpenter issue resolved. Evan reimbursed only the custom sample. I'm absorbing the rest. I'm telling you because I don't want you assuming he bought me out of the consequences. Aaliyah replied, I don't assume that. Greta answered, you did it first. Aaliyah almost deleted the thread, then wrote, yes, I did. Greta replied. I also assumed not asking made me less responsible. It didn't. No friendship formed. No ayense. Friday at 11:48, Gordon called Evan. I need a direction on Leora Ridge. Evan sat alone in his office with an alternate funding instruction prepared but unsigned. The money was unquestionably his. No one needed Aaliyah's consent. Greta would not take the assignment, but he could keep the property as an investment or sell later. Completing the purchase would preserve the deposit and convert a failed promise into an asset. Everything measurable could still be saved. Withdraw the buyer entity, Evans said. Gordon clarified that there could be a deposit consequence. Understood. Evan did not call Aaliyah or Greta. He sat with the discomfort of choosing a lost money could have prevented. He came home after 6. Aaliyah was folding laundry. I withdrew Leora Ridge. Okay. He waited. That's all. What do you want me to say? I don't know. Then that's why you needed to do it without knowing what I would say. He sat near the window. Does it change anything for us? There it was. The question he had tried not to ask. Yes. Hope moved across his face. It changes what I believe you might be capable of, she said. It does not tell me I have to stay. The hope did not disappear. It became uncertain. Aaliyah spent the next 4 days looking at temporary apartments. She did not announce the search first because she did not want it to become a negotiation, but she did not hide it. When Evan saw 3 listings beside her laptop, he stopped. You're moving. I'm looking. For how long? I don't know. Are you ending the marriage? I'm ending the way we're living in it right now. He sat across from her. I walked away from the villa. I know. I restored the reserve. I know. I accepted Greta ending things. That shouldn't be on your resume. He flinched. Aaliyah softened. This is what I mean. You're listing corrective actions like they should add up to a result. I'm trying to understand what more you need. Maybe there isn't a more. That sounds like punishment. Punishment would be if I wanted you to suffer until you earn me back. I don't want that job. I don't want to calculate what suffering equals our marriage. I want space where your improvement is yours, not something you perform close enough to me that I feel obligated to grade it. Evan looked toward the kitchen. So I start changing and you leave. Yes, that is difficult to hear. I know. Do you see why it feels like there was no correct choice? There was a correct choice about the villa, and it didn't save us. Correct choices are not coupons. She wished she had said it less sharply, but did not take it back. Evan rubbed his hands together. I thought if I could prove I understood. You are proving something. Apparently not enough. Aaliyah's voice broke slightly. There. Enough. Enough apology. Enough restitution. Enough right choices. Enough patience. Enough money. Enough loss. Then the account closes and I come home emotionally. Evan's face changed. Maybe the thing you have to learn is that another person's choice can remain yours to live with even after you do everything better. After a long silence, he asked, Are you asking me to move out? No, I'm choosing to. I found a furnished place I like, and I want the physical act of choosing where I go next. He nodded. Do you want help? Evan was good at logistics. He could arrange movers, negotiate a better lease, transfer utilities, fill a refrigerator, erase every inconvenience before Aaliyah carried one box. No, she said. I may ask later. If I do, wait until I ask. I understand. I think you might. Greta, meanwhile, met a restaurant client downtown and spent 3 hours discussing lighting and traffic flow. She had deleted Villa Leora from her active projects, but kept the sketches because they represented work she had done, not a future Evan owned. When a client asked if she still planned retreats, Greta said, "Not this year. Too much overhead, too much borrowed certainty." She let the client assume it was a business joke. She did not need Aaliyah to witness the end of the affair for it to count. Gina continued administering Ravelin Crest normally. When Evan asked whether a new internal notification practice might reassure Aaliyah, Gina said, "Ask Aaliyah what she wants if she wants to discuss governance. I am not designing intimacy controls." On Saturday, Aaliyah signed a 3-month lease on a furnished apartment 15 minutes from the marital home. It was smaller than any place she had lived since her 20s. For kitchen cabinets, 1 bedroom, windows facing trees instead of a pool. She loved it immediately. On moving day, she packed clothes, books, toiletries, kitchen things she preferred, and a framed photograph from their 10th anniversary trip. She was not erasing the marriage. She was refusing to use its history as proof of its future. Evan carried nothing until she asked him to take 1 box downstairs because it was heavier than expected. He lifted it without saying he had known she would need help. That nearly undid her more than any apology. The first night in the temporary apartment, Aaliyah slept badly. The mattress was too firm, and the refrigerator made a ticking sound every 12 minutes. At 2 in the morning, she almost texted Evan to ask whether he remembered the brand of white noise machine in the guest room. She caught herself, laughed quietly, and downloaded an app instead. In the morning, Evan sent 1 message. "Hope the first night was manageable." Aaliyah replied, "Mattress is terrible. Refrigerator has opinions. Otherwise fine." He responded, "Noted. Nothing arrived. No new mattress. No technician." Aaliyah sat at the tiny table and felt a ridiculous, painful gratitude for the absence of help. That afternoon, she returned to the marital house for mail. "How's the apartment?" Evan asked. "Small. Do you like it?" "Yes." He nodded. "Good." That was not the response you wanted to give. "No. What did you want to say?" "That you shouldn't have to live somewhere small to prove a point." "What stopped you?" "Realizing I would be deciding what the apartment means for you." Aaliyah smiled faintly. "Progress. Painful progress. Most of it is." He handed her the mail. "There's something from Ravelin Crest." "I didn't open it." "Congratulations on basic privacy." He laughed. They stood in the kitchen where so much of their marriage had happened without either naming it. "Are you seeing a counselor?" Evan asked. "Next week." "Would you ever consider going together?" "Maybe later." He nodded. "No bargaining." "And you?" she asked. "Started yesterday." "How was it?" "Annoying." He asked why I described feelings as problems with inputs. Aaliyah raised an eyebrow. "You're paying someone to discover this?" They both laughed. Neither moved closer. A week later, Greta accepted a consulting project for a small hotel renovation. It was less glamorous than Villa Leora and much more real. She used the photographer credit for documentation and hired the same carpenter for a communal table. She had wanted a villa to prove she could build something independent. Losing it forced her to do the work without the shortcut. When Evan emailed asking whether she wanted the remaining Villa Leora measurements forwarded to her archive, she replied, "No. Keep or delete them. They're not mine." He deleted them. He did not tell Aaliyah. His change could not depend on being observed by her. Aaliyah and Evan's conversations became shorter and less loaded. They discussed insurance renewal, a cousin's birthday, a package addressed to the old house. Once Evan asked if she wanted him to bring it by. She said Thursday after 6. He said fine and did not ask to stay for dinner. Aaliyah began to understand that separation was not a verdict on whether Evan could become better. It was a refusal to make proximity the reward for his improvement. One evening her sister asked, "So are you divorcing him?" Aaliyah looked around the small apartment. "I don't know yet." "But you left." "Yes." "Doesn't that mean you know?" "It means I know I can't live inside the marriage while I'm still deciding what the marriage is." "Do you want him back?" Aaliyah took her time. "Sometimes." "That sounds terrible." "It's honest." The separation itself was real enough. Evan was not entitled to access because she still loved him. Aaliyah was not required to stop loving him in order for leaving to be valid. 3 weeks after Aaliyah moved out, a grocery delivery arrived on a rainy Saturday morning. She had ordered enough for 4 days: chicken thighs, spinach, yogurt, berries, coffee, bread, eggs, sparkling water, and the dark chocolate she bought when she knew she would otherwise convince herself she needed nothing unnecessary. The delivery worker set 2 paper bags and 1 insulated bag outside her door. Aaliyah thanked him, carried them inside, and began unpacking. Halfway through, she found things she had not ordered: children's cereal, whole milk, frozen pizzas, a giant bag of oranges, enough pasta for a family. For one strange second, she assumed Evan had done it. The thought arrived automatically. He noticed I was underbuying. He found the order. He added things. He thought he was helping. Anger rose almost as quickly as recognition. Then Aaliyah saw the receipt stapled to the second bag. Apartment 4B. Not hers. The delivery worker had mixed 2 orders. She stood looking at the cereal and laughed so hard she had to put one hand on the counter. Her phone buzzed. "Evan, did my package for you arrive Thursday? I realized I may have written your old unit number." Aaliyah typed, "Yes, it arrived. Thanks." She did not tell him about the grocery mix-up. Not every ordinary event needed to become a lesson they shared. A knock came. The embarrassed delivery worker said, "I think I gave you part of 4B. "You did." She handed him the extra bag. "I was about to bring it out." He apologized and left. Aaliyah closed the door and stood with her hand on the knob. Months earlier, she would have thought the final meaning depended on whether Evan learned to ask before acting. Now, she understood that was only part of it. Her life did not need to become a classroom where every changed habit proved something about him. Some choices simply belonged to her because she was the person making them. On the counter remained only what she had ordered. For days of groceries, 1 unnecessary bar of chocolate. Nothing selected for her by someone who thought knowing her well enough was the same as having permission to decide for her. She put the spinach in the refrigerator, coffee in the cabinet, bread beside the toaster. Across town, Evan was doing his own grocery shopping online. He added Aaliyah's preferred coffee brand to his cart from habit, stared at it, and removed it because she no longer lived there. The act hurt. He let it hurt. He did not order coffee for her apartment or text to ask whether she needed any. He had begun to understand that love could notice a need without claiming the right to meet it. Greta spent that afternoon at the hotel renovation, standing beside the communal table she had designed with the same carpenter from the abandoned villa project. 6 chairs fit comfortably around it. She ran a hand along the edge, checked clearance near the wall, and asked the contractor to shift the table 3 inches toward the window. It was not Villa Leora. It belonged to a paying client. That made it more hers than the villa ever had. Gina reviewed Ravelin Crest's monthly authorization queue and saw both Aaliyah's and Evan's names attached to a routine investment renewal. Both approvals had been requested before any commitment was made. She processed it without assigning emotional significance. Gordon closed another property transaction for people whose marriage he knew nothing about and preferred to keep that way. There was no public reckoning. No one applauded Aaliyah. Evan remained wealthy. Greta remained employed. Villa Leora was eventually relisted. Aaliyah remained legally married and practically separated, with no promise about whether separation would become divorce or reconciliation. What had changed was smaller and harder to reverse. Evan no longer believed making everything whole gave him the right to decide when another person should feel whole. Greta no longer confused expensive support with independence. Aaliyah no longer confused being morally right with knowing which consequences everyone else deserved. She folded the empty paper bag, slid it into recycling, opened the dark chocolate, broke off 1 square, and ate it standing at the counter in the apartment she had chosen for herself. This story is a fictional narrative created for entertainment, reflection, and educational purposes. Any resemblance to real people, places, or events is purely coincidental.